I'm Louie Gohmert. I am a servant from the 1st District of Texas, and you often would hear me speaking on the floor if you listened. I'd tell you about bills that we had taken up that we shouldn't have, bills that didn't pass that should have, bills that didn't pass that thank God didn't pass. But Speaker Pelosi has changed things under the guise of COVID-19, the coronavirus. So we don't have the opportunity to speak on the House floor. So we're doing a podcast. And we expect to keep doing podcasts so that we can keep you apprised of what's really going on around here. I wanted to talk about the case that is being appealed, thankfully. It's called a writ of mandamus, or application for writ of mandamus. It's been filed by Mike Flynn's lawyer, Sidney Powell. Sidney is a superb lawyer. She knows what she's doing. But Judge Sullivan, this federal judge, he's decided he needs to be the prosecutor too. Well, it's unethical. It's inappropriate. They used to tell us at all the judicial conferences that that's exactly what you don't need to be and you should not be. And if you want to be the prosecutor, you ought to be removed from the case. And if you're not going to recuse yourself voluntarily, then somebody needs to get you removed involuntarily. So he does not want to accept the withdrawal of the guilty plea by Mike Flynn. And I hear so many people saying, but Mike Flynn, he pled guilty. Yeah, and as a judge, that meant a lot to me. Somebody comes before me pleading guilty, I'd ask them the whole litany of questions and make sure it was voluntary. The difference is when you find out that someone has been threatened, extorted, blackmailed with the full power of the U.S. government behind them, that they have been inappropriate, to say the least, in what they're doing, they forced this guilty plea on. And now keep in mind, I know a lot of people have talked about Mike Flynn, a 33-year veteran, dedicated to the country. He was willing for 33 years, probably still is, to take a bullet on behalf of his country, lay down his life for his country. They couldn't make him plead guilty, threatening to destroy his life. They couldn't get him to plead guilty. He was willing to lay down his life for his country. You think he wouldn't be willing to lay it down for his son? So they threaten his son. That is about as low as it gets. You threaten a child. That's something that radical Islamists or terrorists of all kinds around the world would do. And now we find out it's being done by our own Justice Department. You're threatening a guy's child to get him to do something he could not otherwise do. So bankruptcy didn't get him. Basically he was out of money, had to sell his home. That didn't get him to enter a guilty plea. It was only when they extorted, they blackmailed him. You either plead guilty or we're destroying your son too. He said, look, figuratively speaking, I would lay down my life for my country and I will lay it down for my child. Well, if you haven't ever seen it, you can find them. People that were POWs that admitted to crimes they didn't commit. Well, when those POWs came back, I'm not aware of any case in which a POW was prosecuted for a crime they admitted when they were under extreme duress or they were being blackmailed, extorted, forced into doing that. You don't go after the guy that was extorted, blackmailed, put under extreme duress. You go after the lowlifes that did that forced a actually false statement. That's where the real crime was, and that's where the people ought to be pursued, not Mike Flynn. So when all of this evidence starts coming out about how they illegally, unconstitutionally set Mike Flynn up, and they knew he didn't commit a crime, yet they still persecuted him and then prosecuted him, You shouldn't go after Mike Flynn. You dismiss that and you go after those low-life prosecutors or justice or FBI agent, whoever it was. You go after them and you put them in jail, not Mike Flynn. So now the Attorney General, on the recommendation of all of those that have been looking into this, that are legitimate and not like Peter Strzok, just out with a vengeance, people that looked at it fairly and impartially said this guy never should have been prosecuted. He never should have been extorted. They shouldn't have threatened his son. So to avoid just a terrible injustice and a mockery of the Constitution, we got to dismiss this case. And then a federal judge said, whoa, wait a minute. Why isn't this guy being prosecuted for treason? Well, why isn't the judge being prosecuted for treason? He wants to blackmail, extort Mike Flynn to plead guilty himself? For heaven's sake, guy shouldn't be on the bench. He's one that got prosecuted for treason, who was extorted by justice officials, and now he's an accomplice. He wants to extort him too. He wants to jump on the bandwagon. For heaven's sake, that's outrageous. So what does he do? He lawyers up. Sidney Powell files an application for writ of mandamus to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and he hires a lawyer because he wants so desperately to keep this case and go after Mike Flynn to add on to the extortion of Mike Flynn that he lawyers up. For heaven's sake, why would you have to hire a lawyer? You got law clerks right there giving you briefs on every question you ever want. So this judge is really serious about wanting to try Mike Flynn for treason when Mike Flynn is the victim. Well, there's a number of us, members of Congress, that have an attorney, great attorney, General Marcus. He's filed a brief, an amicus curiae brief, a friend of the court brief. And one of the things that he had found is a case called United States versus Cowan. And big shocker, these so-called Watergate prosecutors, they don't mention the Cowan case in their brief. I wonder why. Well, let's figure it out. It was decided in 1975. Who were the prosecutors in that case? Oh, that was a Watergate case where the Watergate prosecutors were asking the judge to allow the dismissal of a guilty plea and a dismissal of the case. And that was appealed. And the judge said he wasn't sure he could accept a withdrawal of the guilty plea. So the Watergate prosecutors took it up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and said, this is outrageous. This judge can't fail to accept our dismissal, even though he pled guilty. He's got to accept it. And guess what the Fifth Circuit said? The judge got no choice. The prosecutors decide what will be prosecuted and what won't. And this case is one they want to dismiss. The judge has no choice. The judge will dismiss the case. And that's what happened. So now you understand why some might call them hypocrites. But these Watergate prosecutors didn't cite that case. Sounds like somebody could think they're actually being dishonest. Maybe they've got Trump derangement syndrome. Whatever the reason, they're either terrible lawyers, it seemed like. This is my opinion. They'd have to be terrible lawyers not to have realized that they created that law in the Cowan case. Or they're just not very good lawyers and they don't do adequate briefing. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But I know what the law is, and I know what the Constitution says. And there is a distinction between the branches. And it's a distinction that is so severe that I respect so much. I wouldn't legislate from the bench as a judge or a chief justice. I had to follow laws whether I liked them or not. And when things got so bad, I felt like we have got to change some federal law. Then governor wanted to appoint me to another another appellate bench. I said, no, Governor Perry, I'm going to run for Congress. I can't accept another appointment. I'm going to go make the law instead of just follow it. Well, maybe it's time for Judge Sullivan to retire. And then maybe he could get hired on at some prosecutor's office, because it sounded like he's just the opposite of where I am. I wanted to go legislate, so I left the bench to run for Congress. He needs to leave the bench so he can go work as an assistant DA somewhere, maybe a assistant U.S. attorney somewhere, because that's where his mind is. But he needs to get off the bench. And that's all I've got to say.